Good evening. It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024, here in Sarasota, Florida. This is video 16 of 30 in the series titled Touching the Soul Through the Heart, Body, and Mind. Today's video is going to be titled Soul Planning. Now, I am going to include for returning subscribers to my YouTube channel. If you are a subscriber to my YouTube channel and at least this is how I think it appears, and if you go to my YouTube channel, the video that will welcome you, that's what I'm setting it up as, will be a video titled the same thing from 2013 when I first talked about this concept publicly. Soul planning, SOUL. This is a concept, a spiritual concept that I have come to believe is one of those truths with a capital T, meaning that it is true for everybody down here in their school, whether or not the individual wants to buy into it or not. Now, with that said, it took me about a year of really coming to terms with what this concept said and meant and indicated. This is the belief that at a soul level, now listen, I know a lot of people these days at funerals after they die are getting cremated, but I know a friend of mine's grandmother just died and there was an open casket there. So there are still open casket funerals. For anybody that has ever been to an open casket funeral, you know that when you look at that deceased body, it is not grandma or grandpa or your aunt or your uncle or whomever it is. The essence of them is gone. The body is still there, and obviously it will decompose eventually. But what brought life to that body is clearly not the body. It's clearly an energy that is beyond the body, that brings life to these bodies, that animates these bodies. I have come to believe that that is a universal truth, that that is our soul. That is our soul energy, the energy of our essence. And our souls have many, many lifetimes in many different dimensions, in many different like I've shared in a previous video, we've had lifetimes as men and women. We've had lifetimes as different races. We've had lifetimes being rich, lifetimes being poor, lifetimes being in the middle. Our souls have these journeys, and each lifetime is, if you imagine it like school, each lifetime is a grade level. And each lifetime, therefore, we set out to learn specific lessons. We set our lives up before we come down into these lifetimes. And we set up certain themes that we're going to explore, and thus certain lessons that we're going to learn. We, at the soul level, we choose our parents, they choose us. Yes, our parents in this lifetime clearly are older than us in this lifetime, but it is not necessarily the case that at the soul level, your parents are in fact older than you. You very well may be older to them than them at a soul level. It's all across the board. It's all sorts of combinations. There was a book of this title called Soul Planning, which was one of approximately 40 books that I read in a 7-week period that literally was the last oomph of energy that I needed that allowed me to have what I call my point of no return spiritual awakening on November 18th, 2010. Just prior to that, less than 2 months prior to that, I went on an insane reading spree. I was up in Michigan. I was preparing to leave Florida for I thought what was going to be forever, moving to Seattle, Washington. And I went home to the hornet's nest to where all my pain and wounds were rooted. And I vowed that I was not going to move to Seattle with all of that baggage. I was just looking to get myself back on the path of happy. And instead, I ended up having this only it could be referred to as a spiritual awakening. And a huge part of that was reading all of these different books from every spectrum. I was reading books on Christianity, Muslim, Islam, Judaism, paganism, crystals, sacred geometry, angels, astrology, numerology. I mean, you name it. I was reading it and taking it in. And to me, all of it was saying and expressing the same the same thing, just with different stories, if you will, and different characters. Now, I also was taking in books that were talking about some pretty high level concepts. Soul planning was one of them. In this particular book, there were 10 stories that were laid out. The very first story is what immediately got me. In the first story, it was the soul of what would become the souls of a father and son. And they were up wherever we are before we come down to these lifetimes. Let's just call it heaven. They were in heaven and they're having their soul planning session and they're talking about what they're going to set up. And it's the son's life that he is looking, what he, as the son, is going to set up for his soul to learn through this particular lifetime. And in this lifetime, he was going to be a gay man. And his father was going to be somebody that was going to have a very challenging time accepting his son as a gay man. And in this session, the soul of the father was expressing to the soul of the son and was saying, I can't agree to do this. I can't agree to treat you like this. I can't agree to play this role. And the soul of who was going to be the son, who was playing the role of the son in that lifetime, said, it's okay. I'm choosing this. I'm saying here and now, it's okay. My soul needs to have this experience, and this particular experience and dynamic with you as my father is going to allow for the soul's growth. It's okay. I ran up to my mom's room. This is the same house, by the way, that I spent age almost 9 when we moved from Detroit until 18, until I graduated and came to Florida for college. So there was a lot, quite literally, energetically, in that home. And I went up to my mom and I could not believe what this introduced to me. I had never been introduced to this concept. This was the first time. And I wasn't completely sold on it right away. But what it immediately allowed me to do was work through an enormous amount, like let's just call it the first layer of forgiveness that I needed to have extended to my own father. Because my parents were not only divorced once from each other, shortly after we moved to the suburbs. My mom was a single mom with 3 of us under the age of 9. They were divorced by the time I was 9. My dad, they got remarried my junior year of high school, which was extremely hard, not a happy, good time in my lifetime that year, those last couple of years of high school, with dad moving back in, only to get divorced again, 17, about 10 or 11 years later. It happened again. The family again went through the ringer. And it again was not something that was easy. So much pain in my immediate family, despite the fact that I would also say there's a ton of love. With that said, I had a lot of anger that had built up towards my father, because the ripple effect of that happening the first time was enough, but then the second time, the dominoes that came falling down as a result, it was just never something that we really worked through as a family, not even close. And my brothers, I, and my mother, I mean, we all suffered in tremendous ways for lots of years. And so, this idea of soul planning and imagining the souls of my immediate family members in heaven agreeing to this, just just opening myself up to contemplate that. I didn't have to accept it as that being the truth, but just opening myself up to think that that may have been possible changed everything. And it would be another 6 or 8 months of really sitting with this concept and then living as I had my awakening and jumped back into my life with an insanely different and new and positive, and I mean everything changed after that awakening. And as a result, I everything was looking different. I was looking through life through a completely different lens. And all that I could do was accept that this was absolutely, absolutely true. That we, in fact, choose these lifetimes. And let me tell you, as somebody who was always hugely responsible, I was taking responsibility for all sorts of shit that I had no business taking responsibility for. I was somebody that absolutely did not shirk responsibility. But what I realized with this concept of soul planning, that took responsibility and accountability for one's life to a flippin' totally different stratospheric level. Because now all of a sudden, you can't say, well, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. Not exactly. We chose our families with very specific reasons to explore very specific themes, to go through some very hard shit. And our families are usually the root of all of it. And if you don't address those wounds, they will repeat themselves in all sorts of different relationships throughout your life until you learn the lessons. And if you die from this lifetime before learning those lessons, you come back and you get another shot. I share all of this because we live in a world right now that has become highly focused upon victimization, highly focused upon believing certain groups of people with certain experiences somehow are better or deserve special treatment than other groups of people. And all it's doing is mucking things up and causing all sorts of separations that don't need to exist and that certainly aren't real from the grand scheme of things. From the source level, folks, we really are all connected. Yes, we're leading individual lives down here, but trust me, if you go up the family tree, we're all connected. So this immense focus on separation and division and glorification of certain people with certain whatever, fill in the blank, and then victimization of, oh, boo hoo, I'm not being treated, I'm a victim, blah, blah, blah. It's horseshit. And it's destroying humanity as a whole. I'm not saying there aren't circumstances and situations where there really are victims, especially for children, especially for children. I understand that suggesting that we choose some of the horrible things that happen in people's lifetimes on this planet, I understand that it could be perceived that even suggesting something is somehow a horrible thing to do. I will always remind people my intention is never, ever, ever, ever to be horrible, to be mean, to poke and upset people purposely. That's never my intention. If it does upset you, I invite you to go deeper If something is upsetting to you, trust me, that's a big, 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 big flag for you to go deeper, to peel back the layers of the onion, to ask yourselves, why is this upsetting? And just like in yesterday's video, when I was discussing what a positive exercise it can be when you cause yourself maybe not to see everything from every degree in 360 degrees, but certainly to try to see things from a handful of different perspectives, to try to see an issue from a handful of perspectives before choosing which side you think you're going to be on. That exercise is never going to fail us. And I think being able to examine different concepts and try them on and really trying to put yourself in the position of believing it without actually believing it, if that makes sense. Like just trying it on. You don't have to, in the end, decide, but just learning how to go through that exercise, oh my goodness, empowering for you as an individual because it helps you to identify and know yourself even better. But what it does as well, the extra cherry on top, the benefit is you can't help but to have compassion for others when you try something on that others do believe. If you try something on, it may not fit you. You may not want to keep it. But there are people out there that may try it on and it does resonate with them. And if you go through the process, you at least can have a little bit more understanding for somebody for whom whatever this is thing may be, fill in the blank. In this video, we're talking about the concept of soul planning. And yes, I will say again, I happen to believe that this is one of those universal truths, capital T, true for everybody, whether you want to believe it or not. You definitely don't have to believe it. But I kind of feel like life gets a little easier when you really start to imagine, whoa, I totally set myself up for this lifetime to learn and Earth School is hard. It's hard for anybody, even those that seem like they're having a cake life down here. Trust me, very, very few skate through down here in Earth School. Very few. Okay? We set ourselves up by choosing lives on this planet, certainly at this time space dimension, this particular time on Earth, in this dimension. We chose it for possible, powerful reasons. Powerful reasons. And I just invite you to just think about this. Just think about it. Just contemplate it. And there's a couple of fantastic books that talk about this. Brian Weiss is an author, Many Masters, Many Lives, or Many Lives, Many Masters. Brian Weiss was the first author that I read that was talking about multiple lifetimes. A guy by the name of Michael Newton. Now, this one, Destiny of Souls, is not as good, in my opinion, as his first one called Journey of Souls. Freaking fantastic. Michael Newton is a regression hypnosis therapist. For 30 years, he put patients into a deep hypnosis and then found out that regardless of the patient that was sitting in front of him, male, female, black, white, Christian, Jew, gay, straight, it didn't matter. When they went into deep regression hypnosis in his office, they would recount the same thing, like talking about where our souls go in between these lifetimes. And he uses his actual patient accounts to write these books. The first one is Journey of Souls. I highly recommend it. And the most recent one I've added to my library, my personal library, is called Over Soul 7. This is actually 3 books in one. This is fantastic. Now, for my more black and white friends, like my mom, she'd never make it through this. It's so, because the concept of it's like It's very much treating the journey of souls and the multidimensionality of ourselves, and it's treating it like it's a college education. So there's like a mentor guide of the character named Oversoul 7, and Oversoul 7 has four different personalities that are expressions of his higher soul. So at the soul level, he's Oversoul 7, but then they incarnate. Parts of his soul come down into four different lifetimes at four different time periods on the planet, and it's all being acted out simultaneously. It's brilliant. I just reread this for the second time this past December, and it blew me away again. It's so, if you're interested in a story talking about this that I don't think is a story in any way, shape, or form, or something that's not a story, that's based on real patients going under real hypnosis, these are some recommendations. And again, I just invite you to contemplate that at the soul level, we chose these lifetimes. And then go further with it. What are some of the particular themes that your soul came here to explore? I can tell you one of mine. One of the top ones is the triumph of love over fear. And if you go back, I'll also list here my birthday video from this past December, where I share my own appointment. One time I went to a hypnosis appointment where I was literally taken and experienced my literal birth into this lifetime. And I talk about this particular theme of how I was born despite all the love I know that my parents had, the circumstances of my birth, right out of the gate, right out of the womb, right out of the birth canal, my theme of the journey it was going to be, because fear dominated over the love because of the circumstances of my birth. And that has proven to be one of, if not the greatest theme that this lifetime of Alyson Nouné has been for my soul. And it's a powerful one because it's one that the whole planet is shifting through and learning to understand. And so I would say that almost every single one of us chose to explore that as a theme. Love as opposed to fear, and learning how to live the greater truth that all is love, as opposed to this world that's dominated by fear. So that's it for today's video, soul planning. I'm going to list that video from 2013 as the video for my returning subscribers on my YouTube channel. I will also list it in the description of this video, and I will list the video I did on my birthday this last December in 2023, talking about my own regression hypnosis experience, which involved the actual birth into this lifetime as Alyson. So have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.